the research into this condition, well, yeah, it's been around for about 25 years, but that doesn't mean that we know very much about it. Hi everybody, Leia here, filming from a slightly new setup. So this is still my bedroom, this is still my bed, but I bought a new tripod. This new tripod is going to allow me to be able to film videos a little bit better, because previously I had to prop my old vlogging tripod that's like this tall up on a whole bunch of pillows, whereas this one can stand freely on the floor. I hope you guys like it. And please leave comments below depending on what you think. So, as you already saw the title, today I have a very special video for you. And this video is a new video in my r/IllnessFakers discussion series. Specifically, this video is trying to provide some counterbalance to talk about what Munchausen by internet actually is. This is a real term. It was coined by Dr. Marc Feldman, and I spoke with him. I was able to listen to his podcast. I read some of his articles that he had posted, like some of the quotes and stuff, and I realized that there's a big difference between what he has to say about what Munchausen by internet is versus what the IllnessFakers community is. And by the way, when I say told me in his email, that's something that he told me directly, and if I don't say told me in his email, that's something that I got from either a podcast or an article, just clearing that up. Overall, I want to make something very clear. Dr. Feldman does not approve of the IllnessFakers subreddit. That's what he told me in his email, and I have a lot of genuine reason to believe him. In the podcast that I listened to, he talked for almost an hour, and it was quite clear to me that he has sympathy for people who do Munchausen by internet, the same way he has sympathy for someone who has Munchausen. In fact, he compared cutting off a patient with Munchausen because they went back to faking an illness to cutting off a patient with schizophrenia because they relapsed in their delusions. This is a very different message than what we hear from the IllnessFaker community, and I think that's really important to say that this is a real phenomenon, but what the IllnessFakers community is doing is not legitimate. It's bullying. It's a way of putting people down. And I really think that it's unfair that Dr. Feldman is being brought into this as a way of justifying or legitimizing their bullying when it's obviously something that he does not approve of. He told me that he visited the subreddit for a few minutes and he felt overwhelmed by it, which, to be fair, I think that most people, especially, he's not an older adult, but he's, middle-aged. I think that most people, I think if my mom was on Reddit, my mom would also feel very overwhelmed by what Reddit is. I'm going to start by going into kind of what it is, and I do have notes because I am a professional now. I have a tripod and I have notes on my tablet. Alright, so I silenced my phone. I will say, this whole not working thing so I can have my phone actually on, really messing with me because I'm so not used to it. The first thing to know about Munchausen by internet is that it actually is a subtype of a real illness, which is called factitious disorder. Now, unlike what the IllnessFakers community likes to say, Munchausen by internet is only about the attention and the sympathy. It's not something that someone does for money. In fact, when I emailed Dr. Feldman, he told me specifically that there's a difference between someone who has a scam going that is trying to raise money and somebody who actually has Munchausen syndrome. He also wanted me to point out the fact that Munchausen by proxy and Munchausen, and further Munchausen by internet, are not the same thing. Munchausen by proxy is a form of child abuse or elder abuse or animal abuse. It's not the same thing as Munchausen. Another important distinction that I think exists between Dr. Feldman and the IllnessFakers community is the way that they speak about the people who have Munchausen by internet. Dr. Feldman used to use the word perpetrator because for him he was seeing that as a neutral term. It's someone who does something. But he realized that there's a negative connotation. Of course there is. We use that word to describe criminals, and for him, people with Munchausen by internet are not criminals. They are people that are sick and that need help, which is why he uses the term poser, because they are pretending to have an illness for the sympathy, for the emotional gratification. Meanwhile, the IllnessFakers community uses the term subject. And I think they do this because they want to pretend like there is some type of scientific validation to what they do. However, that is not the case, obviously. It's bullying. We talked about that in the last video. But I also think it's interesting that they basically think that everyone wants a grift. That they're trying to make money or get pain medicine or what have you. That's not Munchausen. Munchausen is very specifically when people are looking to get the attention of others. And Dr. Feldman, in the podcast that I listened to, was quite clear that most of the time, yes, these individuals share in online groups, they have some type of online presence around their illness. He believes that most people don't do that. It's not about sympathy for most people. It's legitimate discussion about what's going on. But he said that there is some type of incentive for these people that have Munchausen's to lie about their symptoms to get the attention and the sympathy. Meanwhile, the people in the IllnessFakers community, I've seen posts of theirs arguing that anyone that has a chronic illness, social media, anybody that engages online in discussion about their illness is automatically faking. Now, I have often wondered if potentially there is some type of self-awareness going on, so perhaps there are people who are prone to that, and so for them, they feel like everyone's faking because they know that they felt the need to fake. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just kind of something that I've been wondering based on what I've seen on the internet. One of the reasons why I wanted to make this specific video is because last week, I actually think it may have been a week ago today when I'm posting this video, there was a post where it was supposed to be detailing all of Dr. Feldman's work and trying to explain what Munchausen by internet is. What I found was interesting was that in the post, they identified that most of their individuals, their subjects, don't have Munchausen by internet. They pointed out that it's a grift, and they essentially dismissed this by saying that Dr. Feldman's work is out of date, or that what they read was published a long time ago. But the thing is that Dr. Feldman is the only one doing the research, which is why he's considered the foremost expert. In fact, it's a problem that he talked to me about. One of his biggest concerns is actually that people in the illness community, and I think you know this if you're watching this video, it's quite often for us to ask each other for help and for advice. And his concern is that if we have someone who is not really ill and they're giving advice, or they're, detailing their treatment, and it makes people think, oh, that's the treatment that works, that made them better, this is what's going to work for me, then that can be really dangerous. It can be frustrating for those who will try it and it won't work, but also it's just dangerous to try treatments that won't work, especially for people who have essentially faked an illness and now are getting better from the treatment because that's what they want. One thing that the IllnessFakers community isn't really concerned about, but Dr. Feldman is quite concerned about, is just the fact that people may be falsely accused of faking. I know that myself, I oftentimes am worried that I'm going to be accused of faking. Even though I have very clearly demonstrated weight loss and I am truly, truly suffering from being nauseous all the time, or, right now I'm not nauseous, but I'm also not interested in food in the slightest. I know that I have a constant fear of being accused of faking, and Dr. Feldman is not lying to this concern that doctors may consider patients who have difficult illnesses or where there's not good answers, that they may consider them faking. He is very aware of this. The IllnessFakers community doesn't seem to understand how it could be harmful to accuse someone of faking an illness that they do actually have. And finally, another point that I think is really important to make is that Dr. Feldman is the only one really doing research. He has pointed out a number of points that I think could be confused with something else. For example, I have autism and so does chronically Jackie. I'm someone who, I know that one of my special interests is medicine. I've Googled every one of my symptoms. Don't worry, I don't freak myself out because I've done this enough. I've looked at differential diagnoses. I consider all that stuff, and whenever I talk about an illness, I am talking about my experience, but also all the research that I've done. I use very precise medical terms. I don't use belly, I use stomach. I use abdomen. Apparently I can't say abdomen today. But, I use these terms, and I notice that Jackie uses them as well. Dr. Feldman points this out as a red flag, and I get it. Because for most people, they're very big, overwhelming terms. But I asked him, I said, if someone has autism and they have a special interest in medicine, how do you differentiate between that and someone who does have Munchausen by internet? And his answer was simple: I don't know. I asked him, is there anything that you would look at and you would say, oh, this person definitely is not faking? Are there any telltale signs? And his answer was, I don't know. The research into this condition, well, yeah, it's been around for about 25 years, but that doesn't mean that we know very much about it. Munchausen is a difficult disease to study, and Feldman said that it's difficult because people don't want to admit that they're faking. And even in the case where you do have someone with Munchausen by internet, when they get outed, they just kind of disappear. They don't talk about it, so it's hard to do research. But yet we have this whole community of people on Reddit that want to crucify people just because they're sharing their illness online. Well, guys, that's about it for this video. I really hope that I did a good job of providing a balance between what Dr. Feldman has to say and what Munchausen by internet actually is, and what the IllnessFaker community does. I'm probably going to make another video. As a journalist, I think it's really important to counterbalance, talking about the negative and the positive, or in this case, talking about the IllnessFaker community and how they bully chronic illness influencers, and talking about the fact that Munchausen is real, but also widely overstated. Even Dr. Feldman talked about that. He said the media makes it so common. Every single, medical show has a patient with Munchausen, and it's overstated. But I also think that it's important to show both sides. So I have this video. I am going to be working on at least one chronically Jackie video. The more I look at it, the more I think about it, the more toxic I realize they really were to her specifically, the more I realize that it's probably going to be multiple videos for Jackie. The next video in this series is going to be looking at a handful of their posts and talking about how toxic they are, and really hitting on the bullying aspect. And yeah, I hope that you guys are enjoying the series. Bye, guys.